Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another newsroom episode. My name is KRiPz, and boy, this has been a very interesting week. So many developments, so many tournaments happening, and most of them have had some pretty intense shit going on in them. Let's get started. Obviously, the very first one is gonna be the Asia Minor, the tournament that I personally had been waiting for such a long time. I mean, this was coming, okay? I had this coming. The hype had been building up. As of now, I'm streaming this. The European minor is going on. The Asia minor has already ended, and Renegades came out on top. But before this tournament even began, some really interesting developments happened, and the dreams of some of the teams were already crushed before this minor even began. Let's take a look at what happened. So, uh, the first things first. Firepower, a team from China. Some of the players were not able to secure visas. Three players were not able to secure visas. They are namely Dobu and Kabal, both of them from Mongolia. There is PTC from Thailand. Luckily, Zhao and Shilpai, they were able to secure their visas. But then the lineup of Firepower that played this tournament was Moxie, QKA, KS, Zhaoji, and Insanity. So basically, only one player from the entire team was actually from Firepower. Everyone else was just a stand-in. Moxie, QKA, they have both played for Firepower previously in the past. So has Case. Currently, Moxie and Case, they are both just free agents. Wait, Moxie has never played for Firepower. He was in Brute Dreamscape from Singapore. He left the team, so now he's a free agent. QKA, Case, both have some history with Firepower, and they were roped in as soon as these three players developed a visa issue. Even Insanity was roped in. Now, the interesting thing to be noted over here is PDC is from Thailand. I'm going to talk about Thailand a little more like in the next few minutes. Now, these players were replaced not just for the tournament. His PTC has been completely removed from the team. He is not a part of Firepower anymore. So that means he was not just subbed for this Asia Minor, he was subbed forever. And now he's a part of Made in Thailand, and he's streaming. He's working there as a streamer, not a player. So I kind of feel bad for PTC because he was a really good player and he helped Firepower win a lot of tournaments. Now that he's not here, he's just been, he's not even a part of the team anymore simply because of some visa issues. As of now, QKA has earned a permanent spot, and now, as in I mean, right now after the minor. Before the minor began, QKA was just a temporary part of this lineup. After the minor is over, we have now discovered that QKA will actually be permanently joining the Firepower team. PTC has been moved to Made in Thailand. Another Chinese team that ran into problems was VG Flash. Now, before I talk about them, do you guys remember me telling you that Captain Mo from Tailu had injured himself? This happened more than a month ago, I guess. So when Captain Mo was injured, AE and Bottle, these two stand-ins were playing for him. Luckily, and I'm really happy to tell you guys about this, that Mo has made a full recovery. Well, not full, he still has some difficulty walking, but then he can start playing CS, and that is as good as a full recovery for a hardcore gamer. So yeah, Mo has recovered, but just as he recovered from his injuries, another Chinese player has gone down. This time it's gonna be Attacker from VG Flash. Now this poor guy, he broke his hand while... Did he break his hand or did he break his leg? I'm not really sure. But yeah, it was an injury during basketball. Yep, he injured himself while playing basketball, and hence the VG Flash coach Z8Z had to stand in for him. But these guys were all Chinese and they were never supposed to have a substitute only because, Attacker got injured while playing. That's that's why the coach had to stand in for them. Talking about Thailand, you remember me telling you that PTC from Firepower, he's from Thailand, okay? He was not able to secure a visa. Well, guess what? He's not the only player from Thailand who ran into trouble. Signature, the entire team ran into visa problems. Yeah, I mean it's crazy, right? The entire team ran into visa problems. They qualified well, and they fought so hard to get here. And now, just because of visa issues, they had to forfeit the entire tournament. Boot Dreamscape was given the slot that Signature was supposed to receive. And even those guys did not manage to make it to London with the full lineup. Like, Boot Dreamscape had to substitute Winter. Why? Because he's from Kazakhstan. Instead of Winter, they had to pick up Bobasor. So you see, like, Signature, they had their hopes completely demolished. Firepower did not get to play with the full lineup. VG Flash also. Neither did Boot Dreamscape. And all of these teams suffered because of the visa issues. I'm going to continue on towards the group stage of the tournament. This is what it looks like. Surprisingly, from Group A, Scars Absolute was able to come out on top. And, I mean, Scars Absolute was never supposed to beat Renegades. At least this is what I expected. But then in the last few weeks, Scars Absolute has been playing so well. And I mean, these Japanese guys, they're really making a lot of progress. They're putting in all that hard work. They're researching their opponents and they're working on their own mistakes as well. Like, I think in IEM Sydney qualifiers, I watched these guys make so many mistakes on cash. They were, getting picked off by pushing aggressively. This time, they made sure that their trade games were completely on point. And that is exactly how they were able to beat Tyloo, at least in the group stage. This happens once again in the playoffs, but then that's a story for later. I'm going to get to it like after 5 minutes. Then, Scars Absolute Renegades from Group A. These guys made it to the playoffs. Obviously, Boot Dreamscape, VG Flash, they were not playing at their full potential, so they were not able to qualify. Boot Dreamscape, I think they should have qualified. I mean, these guys, they lost to a pretty significant scoreline. The round difference was pretty huge. But then each of those rounds were like so close. They boiled it down to a 1v1 or it was just very close rounds. Even though the score difference was high, I feel that Boot Dreamscape, they made it really close and they could have made it to the playoffs if just a little bit more push. That's all they needed to get to the playoffs. But then obviously Scars Absolute, underdogs. I did not expect them to win. I mean, I did not expect them to make it to the playoffs, but they have. And obviously everyone loves an underdog. So do I. So Scars Absolute Renegades from Group A. From Group B, we have Tyloo. Obviously, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Tyloo has to be there every time. And the other team that qualified was from Australia, Tainted Minds. Unique Stars from Middle East, they also made it pretty close. They had a round difference of only 6. Like, a little more push and even they could have made it. And Firepower, obviously. I mean, when you're playing with 3 stand-ins, you really can't expect to win. They had a massive round difference loss. They were down by 15 rounds when it comes to the round-robin thingy. And yeah, I mean, those are good players. But obviously, the synergy that Firepower original lineup had with each other is not going to be the same. It's like Firepower was playing a pug. That's what happens when 5 random players get together, no matter how good those players are. So that's that about the group stage. Let's make it to the playoffs. Now, this is where things get interesting. So, the 2 top teams. I mean, as of now, I think it's safe to tell you that Tyloo and Renegades have both qualified. But then at the start of the playoffs, these 2 teams faced each other. Now, the first match between these 2 teams was super interesting. So, Tyloo won it. And what happens is it's a best of 3, right? The first map they played was Train. I'm talking about the very first match over here, not the finals. I'm talking about Tyloo versus Renegades. The very first match was on Train. Renegades was leading 11-4. Tyloo somehow made a comeback. They won 12 rounds and then they just won the first map, Train. Renegades leading 11-4. Tyloo won 16-14. That's just one hell of a comeback and I thoroughly enjoyed that match. Like, I was sitting with a packet of chips and I shit you not, I stood up, I screamed when Tyloo won and I dropped all my packet of chips on. It was that good. Man, I shouldn't have dropped those chips. I like chips. Whatever, let's move on. Now, the Tyloo, they won against Renegades. That was the only team they struggled against. After that, Tyloo just had a pretty easy run. They beat Tainted Minds and they reached the grand finals. Obviously, Renegades, now they're in a pressurable situation. The first opponent they were up against in the lower bracket was Scars Absolute. And, I mean, in the interview, JKS and Nifty, they both said this thing that they were completely aware of Scars Absolute how they are gonna play. They knew about their playstyle, and even after knowing it, they somehow just, they somehow still lost the map. I mean, obviously they won the series and they qualified. They But then they still lost a map against Scars Absolute. And that just tells the story that the Japanese teams are doing really, really well. Not just that, the fact that Scars Absolute had beaten Renegades in the playoffs somehow was able to get to their mind. And in the interview, Nifty said that we realized that we are trying to counter-strat Scars Absolute way too much. If we just be ourselves and play like we usually do, then we might win. And that's exactly what they did. However, I'm just really proud that Scars Absolute, they were able to beat Renegades not just in one map, but in two maps. Unfortunately, Renegades, they won the other two maps, and then they moved forwards. Again, Renegades and Tainted Minds, then two Australian teams facing off against each other. And at this point, it was basically a cakewalk for Renegades because they have played Tainted Minds like 1,000 times now. And they are well versed on how these Australian teams behave. So basically, they were just playing against their own junior local domestic rivals. And they had an easy time. The final, Renegades, they exacted revenge against Tailu by beating them 2-0. This time, Renegades, that did not give Tailu any chance. In the first map, like in the first match between Tailu and Renegades were leading in train, they lost. This time, they deliberately picked train once again, and this time they won it with a convincing 16-12 scoreline. The next map, Inferno, Renegades, they won 16-8, and they basically steamrolled Tailu over when they were on the CT side. They were pushing all the time, and they were getting the opening picks. And before Tailu could even retaliate, they just fell back to safety, and Tailu was basically not able to do anything. Almost every round, Tailu had to spend like a shit ton of utility just to keep Renegades from pushing on their CT side. Where it should be the other way around, right? It's like the CT should be using their utility to keep the terrorists at bay. Nope. The exact opposite is happening. Yeah. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Renegades, your champions of the Asia Minor. Obviously, two teams gets a slot at the majors. So Tailu and Renegades, they have both qualified, and we will be seeing them at the Face It Asia Minor, which is just a month away. No, wait, not a month. A month and a half. I mean, my math is really bad, but who cares? I mean, it's just like 1 month away. And even though Renegades won this, both the teams have qualified. So I'm really excited to see how these two Asian top dogs, they manage to, play against the best teams in the world. Moving on to our second segment of the show, the Zawi Extremeland Tournament. Man, this one. Sorry. So, this time Extremeland is pretty interesting. This is going to be the 5th iteration of Extremeland. That means 3 tournaments have already happened. This is going to be the 4th year they're doing it in a row. Again, 18 countries. And yeah, it's going to be so huge because every country gets a qualifier of its own. You can see this thing right here. Australia, China, India, Indonesia, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Middle East. That comprises of like 5 nations. Mongolia, Philippines, Singapore, Taiwan, Thailand, Turkey, and Vietnam. Each and every of this country gets a qualifier of its own. One team from each country will come on to the LAN finale of Zawi Extremes, and which is supposed to happen on the 18th of October, and it's going to go on till the 21st of October. The regional qualifiers, they are supposed to begin this month. The Chinese qualifier has already begun. I'm going to get to it later. So the most interesting thing about this is last year, China had 3 slots and every other country had 1 slot each. So 1 team from each country, but there will be 3 teams from China. That's what was happening last year. Oh, I moved my mic. Yeah, that's what was happening last year. This year, China has only 2 slots. So that means 1 less slot for China. However, there's a new development. Turkey has been added to this mix. Turkey. This is the first time they will be competing at a Zawi Extremeland tournament. Now, if you guys know this, Space Soldiers, one of probably the best teams, not the best teams in the world, but yeah, they are definitely world. So Space Soldiers, if they qualify from Turkey and if they make it to Zawi Extremeland, the level of competition in this tournament is going to be through the damn roof. I swear to God. Even Tailu and Renegades, which are supposed to be the best teams in all of Asia, even they are going to have a hard time if they are going to go up against Space Soldiers. So I'm really excited to see what happens when some teams from Turkey come. Extremeland Chinese qualifier. The open qualifiers are going to go on from the 1st August to the 5th of August. Now, every team in China can apply for this. The top 8 teams from the open qualifiers are going to move on to stage 2, which is the closed qualifier. Now, in the closed qualifier, these 8 teams who are qualified will face against 8 more invited teams. So it's going to be a total of 16 teams. And the third phase, obviously, the top 4 from these 16 teams will go on for a LAN finale. This LAN finale is going to happen on the 8th and 9th of September. And out of those 4 teams, 2 teams will represent China. So it's like a very long and very elaborate process. 8 teams from open qualifiers and 8 more from the closed ones. Out of these 16, they'll narrow it down to 4. And then again, those 4 will be narrowed down to 2. So that's how intense the Chinese qualifier is. Obviously, more details will be announced about the qualifiers from other countries. I am going to keep you guys updated about the Indian qualifier, which will most likely happen in Bangalore, in LXG. I mean, that's what it was last year. This year, however, the details are yet to be announced. So I'll keep you guys updated as and when things develop. Okay, I'm having some... Is the mic all right, guys? I mean, you guys are talking about the mic. Nope. All right. This sucks. Okay, whatever. Carry on. The mic is fine now. Okay, thank you, Abhishek Gupta. Thanks a lot. My man, I like you. Thanks a lot. Okay, so let's move on. I've already spoken about the Chinese qualifier of Zawi Extremeland. I really apologize about the mic, but yep. Moving on to the next part of our segment, next part of our show is going to be the DreamHack Stockholm. Tyloo, once again, they have prevailed here. Like, what is this team? And I'm going to reveal some very interesting facts about Tyloo here and China in general. Let's bring up the brackets. This is what the brackets look like. Obviously, if you notice this, VG Flash had a pretty easy time getting to the finals until they faced Tyloo. Same with Tyloo. They beat the shit out of Team Max. They beat the shit out of eHome. And obviously, when they faced VG Flash in the upper winner finals, they were able to beat that too. VG Flash, however, they went on to the lower brackets and they lost to CyberZen. Now, if you guys remember, a few months ago, there was a lot of drama going on in China about the team called Fierce Tiger. Yeah, their player Leo was back banned, and then they had a mudslinging fight with VG Flash about how their players have tried to sabotage their internet connection and whatnot. CyberZen is Fierce Tiger. Except for obviously Leo, the player who got back banned. The 4 players of Fierce Tiger have now once again resurfaced in the Chinese scene, and they are going to be playing as CyberZen. So, last time I told you guys about how this VG Flash super team has been formed to take down Tyloo. Even Fierce Tiger, the rejects, the players who did not make it into the VG Flash team, they formed Fierce Tiger, which is now CyberZen. These 2 teams, their sole objective was to take down Tyloo, and yet Tyloo, they are still on top. Obviously, if this would have happened a few months ago, they were able to beat down Tyloo. But that was only because Captain Mo, their in-game leader, was not playing for them. Now that he has recovered and he's back, these teams are once again struggling against Tyloo. So, what's the point? You do a lot of roster shuffles. You do so much in the Chinese team. You basically ruin the Chinese reputation on a global stage simply because some player got desperate enough to start hacking against VG Flash and Tyloo. And even after all of that, it just did not matter because Tyloo still remains on top. They have qualified for the majors. They have qualified for DreamHack Stockholm. And yeah, they just continue to dominate. There are a lot of other underdog teams in China like Big Time Legal, MFC Gaming, eHome, they were able to beat CyberZen at the very start of the tournament. Then CyberZen had to fight all the way up from the lower bracket. So these 2 teams are also rising, but they are not rising as fast as Tyloo is improving. And now that Captain Mo is back, their pace of improvement has just exponentially increased. So, one conclusion, the rest of the Chinese teams, they need to work harder. Tyloo, even they need to work hard because now they won't be up against the Chinese teams. They are now going on a bigger stage. They are going to the majors and they are going to DreamHack Stockholm, where the best teams from Europe and NA will be up against them. So let's see what the Chinese people have to offer us in the next few months to come. Now we'll just Abhishek Gaming. He's talking about OpTic India qualifiers for the Face It Asia Minor. Nope. Unfortunately, by the time OpTic India was like finalized and they got their stuff together, the Asia Minors had already started. So they have not qualified for the Asia Minor. Nor did they qualify for the major. Yeah, I'm sorry about the mic. I mean, it might just go off at times, but I'll try my best to keep it alive. Let's see what happens. Yeah. I mean, the mic just does a lot of issues. I'm going to have to fix it by the time I start my next podcast. But for now, I think we'll have to I think we'll have to live with this. Now, talking about things a little bit closer to home. Entity, once again. They have a new player this time. And this time, it's going to be Deathmaker. For those of you who are not aware of this guy, his name is Sunny Das. He hails from Silchar. Now, back in 2013, like, I was a 1.6 player back then. CSGO was just taking off. But then CS 1.6 was still pretty popular in India. Like, there were a lot of tournaments. I'm talking about back in 2013, right? A real life friend from Silchar, he tells me that there is a little kid over here called Deathmaker who is making a lot of noise. He's getting a lot of attention. He was getting pampered in the northeastern states of India. And he was telling me like how they treat him like a god. And I'm like, okay, I've never heard of Deathmaker. This was 2013. Fast forward to 2015. JMD Gaming picks up Deathmaker. And I'm like, wait a second. I know this guy. Somebody told me about him. And then I look him up. He is actually pretty damn good. And of course, ever since then, he has been a part of several lineups from JMD. He went to ATE. And the funny thing is, a few weeks ago, even Invictus announced that they are going to pick up Deathmaker, but then he ended up in Entity. Much like the two more players from Invictus who ended up in Entity. Obviously, I'm talking about Excali and Hunter. Now, those two guys, they took the place of Sai and Marzel, who were leaving Entity. Sai, obviously, he was going to take a little break because he had an injury in his hand, so he wanted to let it heal. Marzel, he was on the other hand, he was going to OpTic. And now Excali and Hunter are a part of Entity. Deathmaker is also a part of Entity. So now their lineup is these three players along with Amaterasu and Hellranger. I would say that Entity at this point is the strongest that they have ever been across every lineup they had. Obviously, I'm still a little conflicted between who is a better fit between Sai and Hunter. I mean, they are both oppers, but then Hunter is also an IGL, so that sort of brings two brains to the table now that Hellranger won't have to do all the calling himself. And as far as I know about Entity, they don't have like one fixed in-game leader. It changes from map to map and it changes from side to side. It just depends on who's more comfortable, calling in-game, depending on the map and depending on the side they are on. So that should make Entity a lot stronger than they are currently. I think that, across all the lineup changes that have happened, I think at this point, Entity is the strongest that they have ever been. Obviously, we have more contenders. We have Invictus. We have OpTic India. Like, so much hype about that team. And they are just starting their debut. I'm going to talk about them in the Mountain Dew Arena when I get to that segment. And even they are making a lot of noise. So, yep, that's about Deathmaker joining Entity. Let's move on to the last segment of this day. That is going to be about the Mountain Dew Arena. Now, 4 teams have qualified through the first qualifier. There are going to be 3 more qualifiers, so don't worry, all of you who participated and did not qualify, you will get 2 more chances. As of now, 4 teams have qualified. They are Brutality, OpTic India, it's not Invictus. But there is a lot of talk about Invictus as well. Yep. So the 4 teams that have qualified are OpTic India, Brutality, D9, and Invictus. Now, the interesting thing is, D9, who are they? How did they get here? I have never heard of them. They are not even a part of the Challenger League teams. Obviously, Invictus, Brutality, OpTic, we have all heard of them. They are part of Master League in the ESL India Premiership. But D9? Not even the Challenger League. They are probably someone from the Starter Cup and they are here up against the best teams in India. And should I tell you who they have beaten? You might be wondering where are the other top teams like Too Easy and ATE. I'm going to tell you something. Too Easy lost to an underdog team called TEG Esports. And TEG Esports was defeated by D9. So basically D9 is the team that beat the team that beat Too Easy. Imagine that. Underdogs out of nowhere, they're up here. Obviously, OpTic India, they were expected to get here. Brutality, obviously, once again. Even Invictus, they have a pretty good lineup. They now have Blackhawk, they have Manan, Ribbi, Pasha Sahil, and Binary Bug. So they are also a pretty strong team now. Yeah, and that's all that I wanted to tell you. D9, man. I'm really excited to see how these teams survive in this tournament. ATE, they lost to a team called Gravitas, and that's just disappointing, man. I did not expect that from ATE. Even Too Easy. Unfortunately, Entity did not take part in the Mountain Dew first qualifier. I am expecting that they will, go ahead and take part in the rest 2 qualifiers and try to show what they're made of. But yeah, that's about it for even in the Indian scene. The second qualifier for Mountain Dew is going to start pretty soon. Do stay tuned to afkgaming.com and you will get all the latest updates over there. The few more tournaments that are coming up are the Taiwan Excellence qualifiers. They are going to start pretty soon. I'm going to leave a link down in the comments below, or you can check out our Facebook page, which will have links leading to the registration for Taiwan Excellence Gaming Cup. And obviously ESL Inter Premiership, that's a year-long process, and the qualifiers just keep on happening. So you can keep trying again and again. And I wish you all the luck. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. And I'm going to see you guys next week once again on another episode of The Newsroom. See ya.